The Sony a7C was originally released in September of 2020, and since then, Sony has released 12 new cameras, including the a7C Mark II. So how does the original a7C stand out from all these new cameras? And more importantly, should you buy the Sony a7C in 2024? In my opinion, this camera kind of fell under the radar when it was originally released. Sony was originally marketing toward kind of the APS-C crowd who wanted to transition to a full frame camera, but still wanted to keep the same type of camera that was super light and very travel friendly. And honestly, Sony did a great job of this. In my opinion, the Sony a7C is a fantastic full frame alternative to APS-C cameras. And they did this without adding any more weight or really any more size to the camera. So before we really get into the specs, I do just want to say that if you are a person looking to upgrade from APS-C cameras, you really want to try out full frame cameras, this is a great opportunity or a great option to kind of buy into full frame cameras and just see if you enjoy it. Now, as far as this camera specs go, it can shoot 4K at 30 frames per second, and that 4K is actually downsampled from 6K, which makes the footage extremely sharp and just extremely good looking. It also shoots 1080 at 120 frames per second, so slow motion is 100% an option with this camera. And because of a 24 megapixel sensor size, every single photo that you take with this camera will be extremely crisp and extremely sharp. And just like most other full frame Sony cameras, the a7C also offers the ability to shoot in high dynamic range picture profiles, such as S-Log2 and S-Log3. Now, S-Log3 is something that more professional filmmakers use so they can color grade their footage a lot easier and just pull a lot more colors and contrast out of their images. But for most creators, it's not something that you have to use. And with the a7C, the standard picture profile for this camera is just a regular picture profile that honestly doesn't really require a ton of color grading because of how good the colors look. This camera also offers 5-axis image stabilization, which today is a very standard feature that pretty much all Sony cameras offer. But in 2020, when the a7C first came out, it wasn't something that was expected in a camera. Today, you can find image stabilization in almost every single new camera model because of how important it can be for getting good videos and photos. And when you compare the image stabilization of the a7C to a newer camera like the a7 IV, it holds up really well, and it certainly helps your images and videos look more professional. It is important to note that this camera can only shoot 8-bit images, which if you're a professional filmmaker and you really want to have the best quality footage, the standard nowadays is 10-bit, but for 90% of content creators, 8-bit will still get you amazing video quality. The battery life of this camera is also really good because it's on the FZ100 batteries that are in pretty much all new full frame Sony cameras. Another thing I absolutely love about this camera is the flip out monitor. Now, this is something that Sony has included on most of their new cameras, including the a7 IV, the ZV-E1, and a few other models. It's super helpful when taking photos and filming things because it gives you a lot more versatility of how to frame something and where to look. And especially when vlogging, it's extremely helpful to be able to, look back and see exactly how you're framed in a video. Now, in my opinion, one of the best features of this camera is the autofocus. It does an extremely good job of tracking for focus, and especially eye tracking. When filming YouTube videos, I am never worried that I'm gonna be out of focus for my videos, which is something that is super nice to not have to think about, to just know that no matter where I move, the camera is gonna keep me in focus. Now, if you are the type of person who is looking to upgrade from APS-C to a full frame camera, the only problem with that is how expensive full frame lenses are. But I got you covered, and I have a few lens suggestions that will work wonderfully for this camera. The first one is Sony's 50mm 1.8 prime lens. Now, I have personally used this lens a ton, and I absolutely love it. Yes, it doesn't offer a versatile focal length because it's just the prime lens, but where it lacks in versatility, it makes up for in sharpness. It is a fantastic lens. I have a full review on it up here if you want to check it out, but it is one that I highly recommend with this camera. Lastly, I want to briefly touch on price. Now, when this camera first came out in 2020, the price of a brand new model was $1,800 for just the body. And now you can get the same thing for only $1,100. In my opinion, $1,100 for just the body of this camera is an absolute steal. This camera has a ton to offer, and like I said at the beginning, I don't know a single person who has used this camera that did not enjoy it. Yes, there's absolutely better cameras out there that shoot in higher frame rates, better resolution, and have a larger megapixel count, but at the end of the day, most content creators do not need those things, and you can create some extremely visually compelling videos as well as do some wonderful storytelling with this camera. And at the end of the day, the tool is not as important as what you create with it. So in my opinion, saving a couple $100 on this camera instead of buying potentially the A7 III or the A7 IV or the FX3 is absolutely worth it. Sony did so many things right with this camera, and in my opinion, it is the most budget-friendly camera option for 2024. It's a camera that can be a great B cam, it can be a great main camera for some beginners and even some intermediate people. Personally, if I didn't need all these extra specs and extra resolutions per like customer requests, I would have never upgraded from the A7C. But I want to know what you guys think. So please leave your comments down below if there's something I didn't talk about. Maybe there's some features that I didn't mention that you really wanted to hear about that I can talk about. And that's gonna be it from me. I will see you guys in the next video. Please leave a like, that would be great. Peace.